Hi there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the conscious community to bring awareness to those holistic practices that you can embrace to live your best life. So tap into the knowledge and wisdom of our guests to extract what you need to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. Now, I am completely honored today to introduce you to our guest, who I'm a bit of a fangirl of. So this is huge to have her on my podcast. Tashka Urban, founder of Tashka Urban Music, and also Global Sound School is something new. So welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, you were just telling me a little bit about my music and how you found me, and I'd love to hear a bit of that before I jump in because I know I'll rave on in my passionate usual way. And yeah.
So most of the listeners know that I'm completely absorbed into the chakra work, and
Yes.
you released, these beautiful musical journeys around each of the chakras, and I was playing them solidly for a whole week when I was journeying through them for myself, and it just transformed me to some level that I didn't even know about. So
I love
from
that.
that, just started sharing that out and watching all of your stuff. So you inspire me to be creative within my own vocal expression.
Yes.
So yeah.
Amazing. That's so beautiful. Well, that's a perfect. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how I came into doing that music in the first place, and what changed for me in my whole life when I did say yes to that, which was actually me infusing or fusing together all of the selves that I am throughout my whole lifetime. I think sometimes in life we can feel like we're so many people and doing so many things, and it feels like having to prioritize this one or put that one in the front or bring this. And when I began to make medicine music, it was and with that came voice dance. I don't know if you're familiar with my voice dance series, but I take people through every chakra 1 week at a time. It's a transformational embodiment course that also teaches us how to sing, and it does it in a way. It was my way of tricking people into finding their inner child and their joy and their voice without it having to be stressful or too thinky. And also infusing that with like ecstatic dance, so that we go to a lot of ecstatic dances, or I'm guessing your listeners already know what ecstatic dance is, but instead of going to a club or somewhere and getting drunk and then dancing and letting go of everything, ecstatic dance is a way of just fully using the medicine of our movement in our body to move energy through. And so using that same medicine, like voice dance infuses a different modality with every chakra. So I use breath work and stuff for the first chakra, moving all the way up. Like with heart chakra, we're going into touch. So I really relate each modality to that chakra. So, with the touch one, we're working with more around sensuality, and we're working with even meridian points and massage and chi and stuff like that. But then I also infuse with every single chakra and that modality that I put with it a voice tool, a voice activation tool. So again, in the level 1, the base chakra, we do a lot of stuff around how to breathe properly with our singing and how to use the proper areas of our body to support the voice, which I call reparenting our voice.
Oh,
So a
cool.
lot of us have stories around
Mm.
when we sort of tucked away our voice in the past because we were, told we couldn't sing, or someone made a comment, or we just felt shy or unsupported. And that, like, so many, like, I have not met someone who doesn't have a story around
Yeah.
their voice. And our voice, as we know, is such a direct doorway to our true expression and our true self. And so it's really powerful work, and it's so warming to be able to work with people in that way. And you do see that ripple effect carry out to the rest of our lives when we are suddenly able to feel more free to be our true, more authentic self. Then next moment that's carrying through all the other areas of our life. So it's such an honor to have this work birthed through me, and it really did come from, yes, infusing all of myself together, because I was brought up in a very spiritual background. So we were taught not to have one religion or to follow any particular religion. We were taught to take and listen to and take pieces from all of them.
Oh, interesting.
And probably, if anything, renounce religion, because it was like more important to think for yourself in my family. And I think it's interesting, if I think like if we look at all of the leaders in religious stories, or they all kind of did that. They made their own journey through renouncing what they were told they had to be to find their own path, and then they became spokespersons for their followers. And so I really appreciate that I got that in my upbringing, and I think a lot of that is why one of my big gifts that I am able to bring to the world that's very strong, it's a strong muscle, it's like one of my strongest muscles, is that creative expression and freedom to be and think for myself. And so a lot of the time when people come to me, it's about unlocking that, where I might have had not so much other things supported in my childhood. That was my what was really strong for me. And then on that note, there was a lot of spirituality. So we were, my sister started sketching people's auras when I was only like a young teenager. She would do it at markets, and then she had whole lines of people, and she would do readings for them. So I learned about chakras at a very young age. I learned about lots of different spiritual practices, tuning into energy. We were brought up to be really aware of the food we ate and food as medicine. And so like if I had cracks at the side of my lips or something, Mum was like, vitamin B, eat mushrooms and tomatoes. I'm so grateful for that. And I think I really but I just kept it tucked away, that spiritual side of myself, as I went into, I'm a musician, or I'm a music teacher, or a lecturer and an educator. And I tried to be somebody in the world where, and when we come into, when I start to express about what the work I'm doing now, this is where a massive foundation of it came from, because like still happens now, you're told that, to be creative, to have your creative expression is not a job. It's not, it's something that we do as a hobby on the side. And that, my lifetime has been about, one, proving everyone wrong for myself, so that I can, go my own way and find my own path. Yes. But now my greatest passion is about how to break those paradigms and those limiting beliefs for the masses, because we are at a massive turning point in humanity where everything is shifting, all the old foundations are crumbling. And if we look at patterns over time where this has happened in history, this is what comes out of these times where everything crumbles and things go into like, the depression or the, all of the wars. What comes out of them is massive innovation. And so I am on this crusade to bring forward the innovators and the creators into the molding and the shaping of what comes next for humanity.
That is exciting. I just got full body goosies. So good. And I love the foundation that you came from, and the way you talk about bringing all of those versions of yourself together to embody all the different parts of you and be what you are today. That is so good to listen to.
Yeah, so on that note, so throughout my 20s, I had lots of opportunities with my music. I have some interesting stories where I turned down Australian Idol because I had managers at the time, and there was all this stuff around that. And I worked with big producers, and then, but then my music, and then created music that actually for me, I hated listening to it. And it didn't sound like anything like who I was when I'm playing just me on the piano, like a little song-songwriter, and then I got overproduced in the studio, and none of that registered at the time. I was trusting the people around me. It's not like they tried to do the wrong thing either, but being able to cultivate and find who you are, and that's what creativity is, and that it's about actually the fingerprint of your soul, right, coming through. And if that gets manipulated in ways to try and suit an agenda and suit the way the world needs it or to come out, then of course, how is it supposed to speak that truth and have that genuinity? And so it was really important lessons for me. And here am I, like in my late 30s. I'm going to be 40 soon, in fact, and that blows my own mind. And I'm determined, even though I still go through those ways of like, you know, why am I not here or here or here at this age with my success? And then other times I'm like, I'm so proud of myself, and I also can see that I'm right and aligned and on time. And I know that all those experiences from the past are very fundamental to shaping why there's such a lit fire in me to having what is now this kind of ridiculous passion to make that mark and make that impact. And I've always felt like that. I think since I was born, I can't ever remember not feeling like I'm here to change the world and make a difference. And many people do feel like that. Maybe not everybody does, but for me, it's always been at the forefront of everything. So, you know, I do want to have a family one day, and I do want to do all those very normal real world things, but not at the sacrifice of being able to let my that creative calling that I feel pulls at me so strongly every day.
And as a collective, like I see you pulling people to the light, to their truest expression. Now that is so powerful because, you know, they're not going to maybe be caught up and go through those similar struggles, that they'll be able to just slip straight into where they're meant to be at that time, doing, you know, their own medicine for the world.
Yeah, and that's right. And so what is the future that we want to carve? And it's, you know, if you put a bit of an ingredient in a dish, that whole dish is flavored with that ingredient. So we want everybody's ingredient to be to be felt, to be in there, and it all matters. You know, you can't just sit there and pretend that you can't taste the pepper. You know,
what a great analogy.
And so that, I feel like that's our responsibility at this point in history, is like, well, we've spent a lot of versions of who we are in humanity and the way that we show up as a collective, as a society. And I think the whole experience of COVID and what happened and how it was like, for the first time ever in our lifetime, we felt like something touched us all. And I think that was the reality check for us, realizing that it is one web, one big vibration that's hitting us all. And so we have, you know, just like me and my history of all these different things that have happened that have led me to this point, humanity has that same thing going on, and we have an opportunity to turn it into an opportunity, to make it something that is going to, are we going to learn from it? You know, and we don't know what's going to happen next.
And it's like, who's going to choose in, who's going to lean in and choose themselves and the collective. Yeah, that's exciting.
I love that phrase, who's going to choose.
Yeah, who's going to choose?
Who's going to choose? And that's it. And you listening right now, you know, I know that, like you said to me, Katie, like it only takes one phrase or something that can actually for that day spark something in somebody, or shift their headspace, or lead them in the course of an action, that they make a phone call or reach out in some way. And that can be a chain reaction. And I think that is our gift to each other at the moment, because we have the ability to reach and teach and connect with each other more than ever in history. And so, yeah, this is the foundation of my music. So when I'm recording, I'd love to share a little on that.
Totally.
And this is why I believe my music is so impactful for people, is, so again, just coming back to that discussion about infusing my different selves. So I love writing lists and goals, and I have done that since I can remember. And I always joke to myself that one day I'll get as good at achieving the lists as I am at writing them. And I am getting really close now. But I had my spiritual self, where I was in a psychic group with my family. We would have people every month and they were subscribed, and we would do readings for them. And that was me starting to give permission, like, oh yeah, no, this is who I am. Like, I've been doing this since I was young. And, you know, actually I want to share something really powerful that my mother, when I'm sure every one of us has a bit of a hard time as a teenager, maybe some people more than others. I remember having a really, really hard couple of years where I had some falling out with friends, and I just felt really, I was going deep into my, my wounding, which was a lot of my sort of inherited ancestry wounding, but I didn't realize that at the time. And so I was really lucky that my mum at the time, so I would have been grade 10, I think it was. She had a week on every Sunday. Her friends would come around, maybe only one or two of them, and we'd do spiritual stuff. So it started out, we would just play with clay, and then we ended up doing like mandalas together and drawing together. But then they started bringing, like, we'd read our tarot cards, right? And where was I going with this? Oh yeah, there was an exercise we did from a book called Stepping into the Magic, which was what Mum called her Bible, right? So it was all these visualization exercises, and stay tuned for this, because this is really quite powerful. And I think for a 15-year-old at the time, where this right now, it's quite common for us to be hearing or go to a Joe Dispenza meditation, or go change your vibration, whereas this, we're talking about like 25 years ago. This was happening in my family. So I think where I didn't, I had a really, like, it's taken me all this time to start getting into my business and my wealth and all that sort of stuff, because I had the opposite. In my upbringing, we had a lot of that consciousness and spirituality, but I never got taught anything about budgeting, or it was, it was pretty, rough experience in that level for me. So yeah, we did this visualization. We had to imagine something that was bothering us in our life, and we had to send it love. It was this whole visual that we had to do, but basically we were sending it light and all love every time we thought of it, so that we're reprogramming our own neurons and our own vibration to how we feel about that thing. And at the time for me, it was this girl at school who was bullying me, and she was really to the point that I couldn't even think about going to school without this sinking feeling in my whole body reacting to it. So over time, I was doing this. I remember the first time we did the exercise. I hated it. I didn't want to send her love and light. I was like, Rah! It was the hardest. That was the first hardest thing, to. And then every time I thought of her, I had that sinking feeling. I would rechange it and put it that energy. And I remember this moment at school where she was walking past me. She always throw her head up and call me some name, and basically, and as she was walking by me, I sent her that energy, and I actually legit felt, when you get like electric spark, when you get static electricity from someone, I felt that happen. It was really surreal. And then I can't remember what happened between then, that moment, and then her actually being my best friend.
Oh, wow.
Having sleepovers with me all the time, singing all the words to my original songs, and that she would come over and make me play for her so she could sing them because she loved them.
Wow.
And so
Quantum flip.
Yeah, and I think I never thought much about it, but now these days in this last decade, like throughout my 30s, I do a lot of intentional visualization things, and when I'm calling stuff in, and I guess it comes more naturally for me because it was in my past, in my upbringing. But so fast forward to the music, I'm re-embracing my spiritual side back in with my music side. And that was the first big thing that happened. And then of course, then social media was an opportunity for me to bring that teacher or that lecturer out. So since I was 18, I've been teaching music, both sometimes, in institutions and lecturing, but mainly one-on-one, sometimes out in remote communities, and Indigenous communities.
Beautiful.
And so when it was my early 30s, I'd just lost my father to cancer, and it really, really shook me, because he was like such a foundation of the masculine, even though there was all this trauma around Dad in some ways, he was also my best friend. And I loved him very much. And at the same time as that, I lost my relationship that I'd been with for 5 years, and that broke down. So it was like the two masculine entities in my life completely crumbled. And I had to actually stand up for myself after this. So after like a period of, I think it was 6 months of pretty heavy grieving and withdrawing from the world, I was waking up every day and noticing that I was aching all over. Why am I sore? Why am I always sore? I was like, I'm too young for this. This is ridiculous. And then I noticed something, like when I was watching, and I'm sorry, this is a long story, but
no, I love it.
it's getting to a really good point of how this music all really happened and why it is so powerful. And I think understanding this sort of foundation and how I discovered it will give more permission to others to keep making those discoveries within themselves.
100%, yeah.
So I remember watching my housemate talk, and then a friend that was sitting next to him, and I noticed that the aches would go away or show up in a different part of my body when I listened to the friend than when I did to my housemate.
Oh, wow.
And then I started to, that was a shift in me going, oh, like, you know, I guess the typical, I probably had bad boundaries. I was being super empathic and taking on all the energies around me and not knowing how to center myself and cleanse and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, I noticed, if that can shift according to who I'm focusing on, then that's me, that I'm empowered to do something about those aches and pains. And I started feeling less like a victim and more empowered to do something about it. So then what that led me on to was every day. And sometimes I'd skip days, but pretty much every day. And sometimes I would spend, if I could had the time, up to 2 hours doing what the modality that I coined behind all the work of voice dance. And when I do therapy with people and stuff, is embody map technique. So I had a map on the back of my door, and every time I'd use all the tools that I put into each of those chakras. So the breath work, the movement, the timing, and I put a timing and aligning into solar plexus, the touch and the connection for the heart chakra, the sound and the activation for throat, the intention and the visualizations for the third eye, and then connecting to source and at the crown. So I would use all of that as one big massive process to shift energy through my body. And I found I felt like spirit was teaching me, and I felt like it was also innate. So so I had a map on the back of my door, and whenever something would come up, really, I would, like, sometimes the shoulders would have all the shoulds, you know, you'd start like when massaging out the pains in your shoulders, you're rolling, you're moving, you're stretching, you're sounding, you're breathing. Sometimes you're a bit silent and still. Sometimes it's just one shift of a movement and tuning into that alignment, and something releases. But always throughout the process, stuff is coming up in your mind. And when that stuff's coming up in your mind, that's showing what's in that part of the body, in the cells, because what our body does, it's actually scientifically proven. We hold on to these emotions because the cells feed on peptides which flood through our body when we feel emotions. And so we also get addicted to certain emotions, and our cells will crave certain emotions. So we have to be patient when we're retraining the mechanism of our body. So I had this chart, and I'd write down, okay, I noticed every time I'm on my shoulders, I'd be thinking about things I should do, like somebody I need to get back to, what, and I'd have a little bit of guilt behind it. And so I'd write this and map it out on my body. And I actually ended up, I think it was like in the second year of doing this quite devotedly, like uncovering sexual trauma that I'd blanketed over from my childhood when I was 6. And that it was a profound process. And so after really, really doing this, and I went really deep in it and mapped it out, what came out of it was voice dance as a series to take people lightly through being able to start teaching themselves how to use these tools, because it is innate. That's what I came to understand, and is that this is what we've all forgotten how to use.
The great remembering.
Yes, and we're remembering, and then the more science gets behind it, it realizes, just by breathing in right now with me, and then big long sound. When we do that, we're releasing nitric oxide through the body, which is opening the blood vessels and capillaries, which is flooding our body with endorphins and oxytocin, dopamine, all these feel-good chemicals, boosting our immune system. So there's science behind all these different things that we do that is just a normal body mechanism that we've forgotten how to come back to. So I taught myself in that point in time to center and align and come back to understanding who I am, so that I could tell when the world was pulling me off center. And then I knew how to come back and self-regulate, which is also
so good.
And that's the big catchphrase of these days, is self-regulation, and go deeper. And then I learned, I've done courses on the vagus nerve and somatic therapies and things like that. So I got to catch up to the wisdom that spirit and my body taught me, and back it and give it foundation to science after.
And
that's
like
why
full confirmatory.
Yes, I know. Every time I was reading, I was like, "Oh my God, I was so excited. I was like, this is the thing and I knew it did the thing. And I was like, yeah. So it was mind blowing for me to have that confirmation.
Yeah.
So when I sing and did my medicine album, and it was after, you know, a decade or maybe even more more than a decade, 15 years, I think, of trying to be a musician and a rock star or whatever it is that you're supposed to be, right? Going down that mainstream route and having all those experiences that, you know, and next minute I'm just like, I stuck this big sign on a piece of paper in front of my speaker saying, you have to love it first.
Yes.
And I kept coming back to that over and over again. And as long as I loved it, then if anyone else liked the music, that was just a bonus.
Yeah.
But at least I could listen to it over and over again. Because that was something that I found making music in the past was you'd always pick on it, or you'd wish that he'd done this a bit more. You'd always find things that wasn't quite right already yet. With the medicine music, you know, and I'd always dreamt of making really cinematic, soundscapey stuff that you could hear in movies. I love making harmonies. And so what would happen was, because I'd spent so much time being embodied and actually connecting to my body, that was the key, is just when I sung, I was connecting to my body, and I'd feel, and now it's just this automatic, it's like, do you know about anchors? So you can teach your body how to go into a mode, you know, hypnotists do it every time they click and say a word, they're creating an anchor in you.
I use oils to anchor.
Yes, beautiful. And so for me, all I need to do is I sit up, or whether I'm standing or lying, but I tune into my spine and my alignment, and I feel a connection to source, and then I just know that that's coming through my sound. And I guess through that process of those years of doing it, I must have created that to be a strong anchor. And I can just do it whether I've warmed up, whether I've just woken up, and it's just there for me. But yes, it's the body. And so every single chakra on that album that I did, I'm moving the energy through. And what I ended up doing, so infusing it back to that childhood learning of sending the light to my bully or whatever, and learning about the quantum visualization techniques that were also innate in my sort of upbringing, I started to bring that through. Because I think when I did this, I wasn't that aware of Joe Dispenza yet. It wasn't super, like, maybe this was 5 years ago when I first released that first album. I'm thinking it's probably about that long. So it wasn't as popular. It was sort of only maybe just coming into the field. So for me, I can name it all now, and it makes a lot of sense to explain to people, like catching up to all that the science behind things. But back then, all I was just connecting to my body. It would be my heart or my solar plexus. Sometimes I'm shaking or loosening things or squeezing something out of my shoulder, but I would imagine and sort of decide with that quantum energy that as the sound is coming out of my mouth, it's reaching and hitting people in the future and landing in their body where they need it. So I actually infused and coded the vibration to be medicine for whoever listens in the way that they need it. And that was pretty powerful. And I remember this moment where I was doing this thing that I'd never done with my voice, which now I can do. I don't know if I can do it right now. The wavery thing. Yeah. And when I'm singing a note, because it'll happen naturally, it's almost like a tuning fork where you hit a spot or something comes through. The first time it happened was with the solar plexus. Actually, this is really exciting to share. The solar plexus song, which was the first song that I really fell in love with, and I was like, this album's gonna work. You know, all the other songs I was loving and things like that, but when I did that song was really special for me because it's like I'm finally doing it. And this wavery thing came out of my voice, and I kind of like opened my eyes in this trance to my hand, like it was a tuning fork, and the sound was moving through, and I was doing this weird shaky thing, and I remember shocking myself, like going, what? And being excited at the same time and being like, wow, this is amazing. And actually in the second album, the Orange album, so I don't know if anyone recognizes that I'm moving through, even though it's all the chakras in every album, I'm moving through one chakra at a time. So the first album is the Red album. It's the basis, the foundations. It's where it all began. The second album is the Orange album. And so in that one, the solar plexus, again, a new thing happened with my voice. It's like it shows me something I didn't know, like spirit teaches me a new way of singing.
I love it through your voice. So good.
So like just handing it over energetically. And I love the surprise that I don't know, you know. And so it was just this, kind of stuff. I was doing a lot of, it really has to be in the moment. And I just come from the river, spending time in the water, and I felt like the water nymphs or whatever were coming through me in the sound. And that's why I love to go spend time in nature and then record, because the freshness of that energy is in it, and I get to bring that through the same way as that quantum energy of my intention to people. And so for me, this third album, which is about to come out, so it's really lovely to do this podcast, is really exciting, because I'm like, it dawned on me, the solar plexus, the third song, third chakra, in both the other two albums had something new that I had never done before come through. So I know that this whole release is like that.
Yeah.
There's something about it. And I come from Central Australia, so Alice Springs, which is supposed to be the solar plexus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like there's something there with that. And
there totally is.
Yeah, and also this chakra for me, I realize when I do my body map technique, if I'm doing therapy sessions with people, I map their body out, and I listen to their childhood story and what's going on with them now, and I can see where energetically, like a frequency, I draw a frequency on the body. I can see where they're like imbalanced in their energy, putting too much or too little in an area. And that's what I did for myself throughout this, like, those years ago, I was doing this technique. And the solar plexus was the big journey for me, because that girl who bullied me at school, she bullied me. She used to call me a blonde Barbie. She used to make me feel bad about being good. And I had a lot of that growing up. Like, I felt a lot of shame around shining. I felt a lot of people hated me because things came to me easily, because where my family was lacking in, in a lot of stability, foundations, and, there was alcoholism, there's all sorts of stuff in my childhood. There was also a lot of, like, and I'm so grateful for it, just incredible depth of communication and creativity. I was so encouraged to be free in my expression.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really threatening to people growing up. So a lot of people, now that I do this work, I realize how much it's the pandemic. It's so many people are struggling to let that come through. And so I understand why I was in my little innocence, so threatening to so many people. I was so willing to be so bright.
Because your light was so bright, it threatened. Makes sense.
Yeah. And hence that's been my journey, my hero's journey, and what I help bring to others and bring to the world. And so there's a lot tied up in the solar plexus. So this release is exciting because I'm also taking on whole new business approaches. So the business partner I'm working with in Global Sound School, Joel, it's an absolute whiz at back end and systems and technical stuff.
Awesome.
We both he's showing me new tips and tricks on Photoshop, so I get to up my skills, because I'm also a jack of all trades, and do my film and media and all sorts of stuff. So he's amazing at all these things, and shows me all this new stuff. And so we're working on this stuff, and we're realizing, like, that dream that I had when I left school, all I ever wanted to do was create like a life school or something that was more like what I felt like the real world should be, because it's a lot of discrimination at school against creatives. If you think about it, you're told, no, you can't pick that choice. That not only can they not measure creativity and all the creative subjects, they're not given as much clout or power in if you want to go to uni, you're not going to get a high score if I picked the drum or all those subjects that were where I was naturally shining. And actually, let's be real, some of the greatest, I saw a TikTok of a guy going, you asked me years ago, what are the jobs we're going to get, that you should do to get paid well? I'd say engineer, he said. And he goes, now creators, influencers. And I think that's really interesting, that somehow through the power of the internet, through the power of the collective connecting to each other, we've gone, screw you. Our self-expression is important, and the way because no two people express the same. And if two people make a TikTok, they're not going to do it the same. If two people, and so I love that it's almost naturally, organically, we're beating the system, coming into our own creative clout and saying, here we are. And so with this release, what we're doing is mixing what we're offering with Global Sound School, which is, eventually we're going to expand to other areas, not just sound, but that's where our empowerment is. We just do it well with what we know first. But helping, when we learn from people go and study online or even in school and everything, you're learning from a lecturer who's separate from your community.
Yeah.
Or you're never going to, it's this disconnect. And so Global Sound School is bringing in different creators, different authorities in their own area. So it could be, I remember you saying something about tech at start. So maybe it's just you do a whole masterclass on how to start to finish nail your tech on creating podcasts or, whatever, you know what I mean? It could be just one class on something simple like that. We bring in an expert on that, a guest experts we call them.
I love how you call them guest experts.
Yes. And they, and so there'll be a whole membership in a library so people can access it. But the exciting thing is you're learning from people who are real in your actual network.
Yeah.
So these people so we're helping other creators get paid. We're also helping the network. It's called a double-sided marketplace where people find each other.
Yeah.
So we're going to be creating, that's going to be happening more and more over the next few months. It's very exciting. And so with my release, which for album number 3, we're mixing a lot of new technologies. So a little secret out of the bag, which is about to hopefully come out this week, is that we're infusing with AR technology, so augmented reality. And so I can have branding like merchandise, I can have clothing, yoga pants, journals that people can write in throughout the album journey, mugs, and on it can be an image that's my brand. So any creative branding can do this. And when you point the phone at it, on the phone, even though it's a still image, on the phone it will turn into a moving image.
Oh,
a
awesome.
video, whatever you want to program it to be. So that's what our sort of super team that we're creating with the Global Sound Schools, that we can create just sonic branding kits for people. And then not only will it create a visual, but that visual can take you to a website or a link or do any action that you want it to do. So every month for my album journey release, I want to not just say, hey, here's my music. I want to show people how I create my music. I want to show people how they can do it themselves. I want to show people how I release like a rebel, how I don't follow the mainstream, how nearly every music artist I know sits there and releases and then they feel just despondent or in despair that nobody listened to their music or that they're getting no money from it because Spotify pays you 0.0001% of a listen, you know what I mean? So you don't get money from the mainstream engine as a musician, but what is doing well is connecting online courses, reaching and teaching each other. And so we're fusing all that together. And so with my album journey, people get to see how I make my music. I'm going to do an online secret concert every month.
Oh, so good.
Get their phone, scan that image, and it will take them to that secret location, little video. And
so good. Do you know what I really love is once I saw this challenge that you did that really was like calling out people to step up and you were like, I just don't want one person, I want all of you. And you just did this like little sequence of music and some lyrics and you're like, all right, now there's the lyrics, give me some tunes to go with it, and just threw it out there. And I'm like, oh yes, like this could just go in any direction.
That's what I love about creativity. I think that was the start of the year. We did a little remix comp as part of the Global Sound School release. And heaps of different people jumped up, like, woman at home with her baby between sleeping to, DJs that ended up playing it in their ecstatic dance sets in Cairns. People who made film clips to it in Perth, to people like in America doing stuff. Like it was just really beautiful. And what I love when you just put yourself out there, and you give people the door to open to go through. And that's what I love most about creativity, is that it's beyond our control. It's its own birthing. It's something bigger than ourselves. And that is the world I want to live in. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because this is the future that I've always foreseen, that I'm here to be part of making this planet.
Yes, you are. I love what you are doing so much. If the listeners want to find out more about Global Sound School, your other amazing offers that you've got going on,
my album journey,
all the things, like what advice have you got for them?
Well, they can find me through, obviously you'll drop all my links in the podcast, and just find me on, please go follow me on, I'm trying to grow my TikTok. Go find my TikTok. on my Instagram. So those two places I post my artistry, and in Facebook I post more of my personal journal and writing. And writing for me is like a best friend. So I'm going to publish eventually soon too, because I love my writing. But those are the difference in what I do personally with my social media. But advice I've got for people who are feeling a calling, their creative calling, is that what you just like, you just don't know the formula or where things are going. Just like for me, you know, I had such strange, bizarre opportunities that, like sliding doors, my life could have gone in any direction if I'd chosen yes or no to different things. And sometimes I used to wonder, did I ruin my opportunity for this by choosing that instead of that, you know? But now it's like, you can't force a flower to bloom. And at some point in your life, you recognize that all of it has collided and come together and makes sense. And that all the different selves of who you are, like it can feel so scrambled and disassociative when you're trying to be, this person did this scene, this person did this person. And I think when we start to actually acknowledge, this is your life. You're not here to find your calling, you're here to choose it, to create it.
Oh yeah, say that again. You're not here to find your calling.
Yeah, it's not about like who am I and like trying to find. It's like you get to choose, you get to create, and actually the gift of existence is that all those steps along the way do add up. It is a strange formula that begins to make sense over time. So probably the best advice I could give anyone ever in the whole entire world is to find what your center is. And so for me, that was doing these modalities and practices, because the moment I finally understood who I was and how I felt, instead of what all of the world was pulling at my strings for, or even my own trauma was haunting me with, I could come to that centered place. So whether that's through breath work, through singing, through dancing, all of the above, whatever it is, meditating, just create a practice every day where you understand how it feels. And I call that self-tuning. So just like an instrument needs tuning before you play it, because if you try and play the guitar off key with the rest of the band, they're going to kick you out. Just like an instrument, because the world will pull you off key to suit it. And people will do that all the time. So we need to tune ourselves. So the best thing you can do, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter what stage you are in your life, is to find what center is, to find how to tune yourself. And if you do that, it'll all make sense, and all the selves can come together, and you'll go, oh, that's why this, and this, and you'll have fun along the way, and you'll be your own best friend and your own greatest love. And that's it.
Oh yes. Now listeners, you need to be rewinding that and listening to that last part again, because that was just pure gold. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and sharing yourself with us throughout this podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and may you all go and just create.
Yes, create. Bye.